Prologue, The Ghost in the Machine. Before the world was wired, before the night was driven back by a million suns of human making, there was a thought. And the thought belonged to a man who seemed more myth than flesh. Picture a room, swallowed by a darkness so complete it feels like the Earth's final hour. In the center, a glass bulb flickers. It is not the steady, reassuring glow of an Edison lamp, a simple hot wire burning itself out. No, this is different. This is a captured star, a miniature lightning storm, tamed and held within a fragile sphere. It hums with a strange energy, casting long dancing shadows that seem to tell a story. Now, picture a laboratory, empty save for the sentinel-like shape of a massive coil. Suddenly, with no visible connection to any power, it erupts, not with fire but with violet crowns of pure electricity that claw at the air, silent and terrible and beautiful. This is not magic. It is a principle. It is a current, alternating, breathing, alive. This was the world of Nikola Tesla. He is the ghost in our modern machine, the unseen architect of the currents that power our lives. We speak his language every time we plug a device into a wall. We think his thoughts when we send a signal through the air. Yet the man himself remains a silhouette, a figure defined by the brilliant light he cast and the profound darkness that surrounded him. He was a poet of physics, a dreamer who saw the future not in gears and steam, but in frequencies and waves. He saw the invisible forces of the universe as a symphony, and for a brief, dazzling moment, he was its conductor. This is not the story of a simple inventor. It is the story of a mind that reached for the cosmos from a darkened room, and in doing so, left a spark that would never go out. Chapter 1. The Storm Child. He was born at the stroke of midnight, between the 10th and 11th of July, 1856. The story, perhaps embellished by time, says his birth was heralded by a lightning storm of biblical fury that lashed the small village of Smiljan in the heart of the Austrian Empire. The midwife, trembling, declared the storm a bad omen. "This child will be a child of darkness," she said, but his mother, Juka, a woman of quiet strength and an inventor in her own right, though her creations were for the farm and loom, not the laboratory, gazed at her son and replied, "No, he will be a child of light." From his earliest days, light and darkness, vision and reality were at war within him. The world of the small Croatian village was one of stark contrasts. The solemn ancient rites of his father's Serbian Orthodox Church and the wild, untamed nature that surrounded them. His father, Milutin, was a man of the book and the cross, a stern priest who saw his son's future in the clergy. But Nikola's mind was not built for scripture. It was built for the universe. He was not like the other children. He was haunted by visions, flashes of light so blinding they would blot out reality, often accompanied by images of things he had never seen, inventions that did not yet exist. He could memorize entire books, perform complex calculus in his head, but he was plagued by a hypersensitivity to the world. The ticking of a watch was a thunderous booming in his ears. The rumble of a distant train felt like an earthquake shaking his bones. His father saw this strangeness as a spiritual sickness, a failing to be disciplined away. But his mother understood. She saw the same inventive spark in him that she felt in herself. It was from her that he inherited the art of discovery, the ability to see a machine whole and complete in his mind before a single piece of metal was cut. The turning point came with a brush with death. At 17, after finishing his studies, he contracted cholera. For 9 months he was bedridden, his body wasted, given up for dead. In a moment of desperate negotiation, his father, fearing he would lose his son, knelt by his bedside. "If you live," Milutin whispered, his voice cracking, "you will go to the best technical school in the world." It was as if a switch had been thrown. From that moment, Nikola began to recover. The promise was more than a reprieve. It was a release. He had escaped the destiny of the priesthood and was now free to follow the visions that had haunted and thrilled him since childhood. Visions of harnessing the very power that had illuminated the storm on the night of his birth. He would not be a servant of God. He would be a student of electricity. Chapter 2. The New World, the Old Ways. Paris, 1882. The city was a gaslit dream, but for Nikola Tesla, it was a city of frustrating limitations. Working for the Continental Edison Company, he was a star engineer, a prodigy who could diagnose and fix problems in dynamos and motors that baffled seasoned experts. He saw the flaws in their system instantly. Direct current, Edison's system, was a brute force solution. It was inefficient, requiring power plants every few miles and thick, expensive copper cables. In his mind, the solution was already complete, elegant, and revolutionary. Alternating current, a system where the flow of energy could be reversed or alternated, allowing it to be stepped up to high voltages for transmission over vast distances with minimal loss, then stepped down for safe use in homes and factories. He built his first induction motor in his head while walking through a park in Budapest, reciting poetry from Goethe's Faust. The image came to him in a flash of light, a vision so clear he drew its diagram in the sand with a stick. He presented his ideas for an AC system to his superiors. They were polite but dismissive. It was too radical. Edison's way was the proven way. And so, with a letter of introduction to Edison himself, reading simply, "My dear Edison, I have known two great men, and you are one of them. The other is this young man." Tesla set sail for America. He arrived in New York in 1884 with 4 cents in his pocket, a book of poems, and a head full of ideas that would change the world. Edison, the wizard of Menlo Park, was everything Tesla was not. A pragmatist, a tinkerer, a businessman who measured genius in patents and profits. Tesla, in contrast, was a theorist, a visionary, a poet who saw electricity as a living force. At first, Edison was impressed by the young Serb's brilliance and tireless work ethic. Tesla worked from 10:30 in the morning until 5:00 the next morning, day after day. The final break was as dramatic as their personalities were different. Edison, dismissive of Tesla's AC theories, offered him $50,000, a fortune at the time, if he could redesign Edison's inefficient DC dynamos. Tesla accomplished the feat in a matter of months, presenting a vastly improved system and a host of new patents. When he asked for the promised payment, Edison laughed. "Tesla," he said, "you don't understand our American humor." It was a betrayal that would echo for the rest of his life. For Tesla, it was never about the money. It was about the principle, the broken promise. He resigned immediately. For a winter, he was forced to dig ditches for $2 a day, his mind, which held the schematics for the future, occupied with manual labor. But even in the mud and cold, the vision of his alternating current motor burned bright. He knew he was right, and he knew that to prove it, he would have to defeat the most famous inventor in the world. Chapter 3. The War of Light. Out of the ditch-digging winter came the spring of opportunity. Tesla's genius could not be buried for long. He secured his own backers, established the Tesla Electric Company, and finally began to build the motors and generators he had only ever seen in his mind. They worked flawlessly. His work caught the attention of George Westinghouse, an industrialist and inventor who had made his fortune with the railway air brake. Unlike Edison, Westinghouse was a risk-taker who immediately grasped the immense potential of alternating current. He saw what Tesla saw, a future of cheap, abundant power for everyone, everywhere. He bought Tesla's patents and brought him to Pittsburgh, beginning one of the most consequential partnerships in industrial history. The war of currents had begun. It was a battle fought not with armies but with propaganda, public demonstrations, and technological supremacy. Edison, seeing his DC empire threatened, launched a vicious smear campaign. He sought to brand AC as a deadly, dangerous force. His associates, in a brutal campaign, publicly electrocuted stray dogs, cats, and even a circus elephant with alternating current to demonstrate its lethality. The press called it Westinghousing. The ultimate goal was to associate AC with the newly invented electric chair, a machine of death powered by his rival system. Tesla, the showman, fought back with spectacle. He understood that to win the public's trust, he had to demonstrate AC's safety and its magic. In lecture halls in New York and London, he stood on stage, a tall, elegant figure, and performed miracles. He passed thousands of volts of high-frequency, alternating current through his own body, lighting up gas-filled tubes he held in his hands as if they were wizard's wands. The current, vibrating at a high enough frequency, passed harmlessly over his skin. The audiences were spellbound. This was not the fearsome killer Edison described. This was a celestial fire, tamed. The war culminated at the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. Westinghouse, bidding far below Edison, won the contract to illuminate the entire exposition. It was Tesla's grand debut on the world stage. When President Grover Cleveland flipped the switch, 100,000 incandescent lamps, all powered by Tesla's AC system, bathed the White City in an unprecedented, ethereal glow. It was a vision of the future made real. In the fair's hall of electricity, Tesla himself held his demonstrations, a master magician revealing the secrets of the universe. The final victory came at Niagara Falls. For years, harnessing the awesome power of the falls had been a dream. DC couldn't transmit the power to cities like Buffalo, 20 miles away. AC could. The Niagara Falls Power Company, after years of deliberation, sided with Tesla and Westinghouse. In 1896, the switches were thrown, and the power of the mighty cataract was sent surging across the state. The war of currents was over. The child of light had won. Chapter 4. The Tower and the Dream. With the victory of alternating current, Tesla's mind soared to even greater heights. He had lit the world, but now he wanted to connect it. His new obsession was wirelessness, not just the wireless transmission of information, what we would come to call radio, but the wireless transmission of power. He envisioned a world without wires, where energy was as free as the air. Ships at sea would draw power directly from the atmosphere. Homes would be lit by energy broadcast from a central tower. The entire globe would be a single resonant circuit. This was the dream of Wardenclyffe. With $1 million investment from the financier J.P. Morgan, one of the most powerful men in the world, Tesla began construction in 1901 on a sprawling site in Shoreham, Long Island. At its center rose a colossal, mushroom-shaped tower, 187 feet high, its dome capped with copper. Beneath it, a web of iron pipes was driven 300 feet into the earth, designed to get a grip of the earth so that the whole planet could be set vibrating with electrical energy. Wardenclyffe was to be his global broadcasting system, his masterpiece. But his ambition outstripped even Morgan's vast fortune. Tesla's vision kept expanding. It wasn't enough to send messages to Wall Street or London. He told Morgan he could transmit pictures, conversations, and limitless energy. Morgan, however, was a businessman, not a philanthropist. He had invested in a radio transmitter to compete with Marconi, who had just successfully sent the first wireless signal across the Atlantic. When Morgan realized Tesla's true aim, to create a system of free energy that could not be metered and sold, his interest cooled. Where was the profit in giving power away? The funding dried up, panic set in on Wall Street, and Tesla's other investors backed away. Creditors closed in. For years, the magnificent tower stood as a silent, skeletal monument to a utopian dream. Tesla, his funds exhausted and his spirit crushed, could only watch. He had promised the world a new age, and now he could not even afford to pay his coal bill. In 1917, with the United States at war, the tower was dynamited and sold for scrap to pay off his debts. The demolition crew said it was the hardest job they ever had. The structure was built to last forever. As the great tower fell, so did a part of Tesla. The dream of a connected, wirelessly powered world died with it, left to lie dormant for another century. Chapter 5. The Magician in the Tower. The failure of Wardenclyffe drove Tesla inward. He retreated from the world of industry and finance and became a resident of hotels, living for the last decade of his life in a suite at the New Yorker. He was no longer a captain of industry, but a figure of myth and curiosity, the eccentric genius in room 3327. His life became a series of precise, unvarying rituals. He walked between 8 and 10 miles every day. He curled his toes 100 times for each foot every night, believing it stimulated his brain cells. He was obsessed with the number 3 and multiples of 3, often circling a block 3 times before entering a building. He had a phobia of germs and polished his dining implements to a brilliant shine with 18 fresh napkins at every meal. His greatest affection was reserved for the pigeons of New York City. He would walk to Bryant Park and St. Patrick's Cathedral every day to feed them, often bringing injured birds back to his hotel room to nurse them back to health. He claimed he could communicate with them. One bird, a pure white female with gray-tipped wings, was his special love. He claimed she visited him through his open window one night, a brilliant light shining from her eyes. He believed she had come to tell him she was dying. He held her, and as she passed, he said he knew in that moment that his life's work was finished. Yet his mind never stopped working. To the public, he became famous for his annual birthday press conferences, where he would announce his latest, often fantastical, inventions. He spoke of interplanetary communication, of harnessing cosmic rays, and, most famously, of a teleforce weapon, a particle beam accelerator that the press sensationalized as a death ray, capable of destroying 10,000 airplanes from 250 miles away. Was it the last flicker of a supreme intellect, or the ramblings of a mind teetering on the edge of isolation? Perhaps it was both. He was a man out of time, a magician whose greatest tricks were too grand for the world to comprehend. He lived in a tower of his own making, surrounded by his visions, his rituals, and the gentle cooing of his only friends, the pigeons. Chapter 6. The Long Twilight. In his final years, the world began to remember the man it had nearly forgotten. Honors that had been denied him in his prime began to arrive. The American Institute of Electrical Engineers, which he had once served as vice president, awarded him the Edison Medal. The irony, receiving a medal named for his great rival, was palpable. At the award ceremony, he was reluctant to appear, lost in his thoughts of feeding the pigeons, and had to be coaxed to the stage by a friend. He received patents into his 80s. He claimed to have met with Albert Einstein, though the details of their conversation are lost to history. He was a living legend, but a profoundly lonely one. The fortune he had earned from his AC patents was long gone, spent on experiments and dreams like Wardenclyffe. He lived on a modest pension from the Yugoslavian government and the charity of Westinghouse. On January 7, 1943, at the age of 86, Nikola Tesla died alone in his room at the Hotel New Yorker. The maid, ignoring the "Do Not Disturb" sign he had placed on his door 2 days earlier, discovered his body. The official cause of death was coronary thrombosis. The man who had illuminated the world, who had dreamed of broadcasting free energy to all of humanity, died impoverished and in solitude. After his death, the FBI seized his papers and belongings, fearing his death ray plans might fall into enemy hands. His research was classified, adding another layer of mystery to his legacy. His funeral was held at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in New York. 2,000 people attended, a mix of Nobel laureates, industrialists, Croatian and Serbian dignitaries, and ordinary people who had been touched by his genius. But in the end, the grandeur of his ideas stood in stark contrast to the quiet solitude of his final years. He had given the world the 20th century, and the world had given him a hotel room and a pension. Epilogue, the unfinished circuit. A legacy is not always measured in monuments or fortunes. Sometimes it is measured in the quiet hum of the world. Nikola Tesla left behind no great company, no dynasty. He left something far more fundamental, the invisible infrastructure of our age. His alternating current system remains the global standard for power transmission, the lifeblood of our civilization. His work on wireless communication laid the groundwork for radio, television, and the Internet. The remote control, the spark plug, fluorescent lighting, the very principles of robotics, all bear the fingerprints of his mind. He was a prophet of the information age, dreaming of a global network of shared knowledge while others were still stringing telegraph wires. The tower on Long Island is gone, but the dream of Wardenclyffe is not. We live it every day. When we connect to Wi-Fi, when we use our cell phones, when we send data soaring through the air, we are completing a circuit that he was the first to imagine. His vision was of a world united by energy and information, a planet resonating as one. We are still striving to build that world, still working from the blueprints he left behind in his mind. He was a man who saw the future with an almost painful clarity, a ghost in a machine that is only now coming fully into being. His currents still flow, his mind still lights our world.